Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Magic Wand's story begins in 1968, a full year before we landed on the moon and about 6 months before bell-bottoms were trendy the first time. This is when the Magic Wand, the original personal massager, was first introduced, and I am so glad it was. No one expected that this unassuming device would soon become one of the world's most recognizable products. The Magic Wand Original exemplifies the phrase icon, and now it shares the spotlight with 3 equally impressive models: Magic Wand Plus, a corded variable speed massager; Magic Wand Rechargeable, a cordless multifunction device; and the first ever Magic Wand Mini, a new, compact, adorable, rechargeable massager. Every product that bears the Magic Wand name features the legendary power and historic pleasure that took the world by storm more than half a century ago. My personal favorite Magic Wand is the original. They sell millions every year, and for good reason. It's powerful and brings so much pleasure in all the right places. Want to get a discount on this amazing powerhouse? Go to sexedwithdb.com/magicwand to learn more. When you're traveling, you don't have access to your amazing sex goodie stash. So you start to pack your lube for sexy time in your toiletry bag, and when you open your bag back up, the lube you packed, of course, spills all over your toothbrush, makeup, and floss picks. Enter a brand new product from Uberlube that will get your lube to your destination without spillage. They're new good-to-go travelers. Perfect for your purse, pocket, gym bag, or carry-on luggage, the Good-to-Go Traveler features the same Uberlube product in a discreet aluminum traveler that comes in 6 colors. Try Uberlube and their Good-to-Go Traveler now with code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off at uberlube.com. Welcome back to a new episode with me and this wonderful team that we have at Sex Ed with DB. Today's episode is all about the future of sex work plus AI and how AI will or will not take over. And M is the leader of today's episode, so I'll let you go for it, M.
Thanks, DB. So today I wanted to pick the minds of our little Sexpert team on AI and the future of sex work and the sex work industry, the pros, the cons, the ethics, and if the porn industry will be out of work soon. But of course, before we get into that, I'm going to put to you the unclothed, loathed, or betrothed. And this week's one is audio erotica, 4D immersive porn, or old school porn mags. So I'll throw it to DB first.
Oh, old school porn mags is so funny the way that you said that, because I just feel like I don't know one human being in my orbit who still uses those, but maybe they're under their mattress somewhere. Like maybe they're just still kind of hidden. Okay, I'm going to say betrothed right away audio erotica. Like I don't even need to think twice about that. I'm a personal huge fan of Dipsy. Not sure if y'all have used Dipsy or other audio erotica, but I think it's fantastic. It's high quality. The workers get paid. I think that the stories are fun. They're sexy. They're quick. And so I'm really into that. I would say loathe 4D interactive porn. Just because it scares me currently. Like I am currently just picturing a robot that goes nuts and kind of like squeezes the shit out of a penis and like pops it. Like that is the current kind of like image in my head, and I'm sure that that's not what exactly happens, but I fear for putting any genitals near a robot currently. And then I would say unclothed old mags. I think like that's hot. That's really fun. Like I'm sure there are some fun hairstyles that we could kind of learn from in those. And the last thing I'll say is that like I watched the Pamela Anderson documentary on Netflix, Love Pamela. Highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. And no shit, Pamela Anderson was like incredibly hot. And I was kind of like, okay, why is she kind of like everyone's obsession. And then I saw the documentary. I was like, I get it. She is stunning and really hot. And she was in a lot of those old mags. So on to you, Sadie. Passing it over.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Sadie. Okay, I think I have the exact same lineup as UDB. I'm going to betroth audio erotica. I don't know. I just feel like this is like the most fun and creative thing happening in pornography, in my opinion. Like, I love what people are doing in the space. I love that like actors are getting involved. Like, you see famous people with attractive voices doing Dipsy stories, and you're like, yay, it's becoming mainstream. I don't know. I just think it's really cool. I'm going to unclothe the old school porn mags because they're aesthetic and cool, and I feel like people are wearing like 60s Mad Men teddies, and you're like, ooh,
Hot.
That is what was sexy back then. And certainly loathe the 4D interactive porn because I assume I'd have to wear some kind of really heavy VR headset, and then that would just give me a headache, and I wouldn't have any interest in doing anything anymore. Yeah, that's me.
What about you, Kathy?
So I am the same lineup, I think, as well.
Oh my God, we're so boring. We love the same things.
I think it's less out of a love for any of the things on the list and more a skepticism towards the kind of new topic that we're going to talk about today. I also don't understand why it's called 4D. It's 3D, right? Like it's not
3D is like the pops out at you, and then 4D is kind of like, ooh, it's touching you. It's
but
like
4D actually means like you're traveling through time, like in the scientific meaning of it. So that's why I'm confused. Anyway, I think we can talk about it. I feel like it's one of these very standard like tech labeling of something as beyond what it really is. But yeah, I'm skeptical, so we can get into that more.
Yeah. Stunning. I'm also like the same with all of the lineup. Like, absolutely. I would say betroth, audio erotica, unclothe old school porn mags, because I think like graphically, like the text and all of that really hits a spot on my like graphic heart. So, and then I'm also so skeptical of anything technology like 4D or VR headsets. I feel like that I wouldn't be able to get over the strain on my head from a headband or anything else that comes with it. So yeah, I'm the same as everyone else.
But maybe if you're laying down, I don't know, maybe there's less pressure or something. We'll kind of see where it takes us. Not sure.
Yeah, not sure. I'm not sure, but shall I hop into the topic?
Yes, let's do it.
Cool. So I'm sure we are all very aware of ChatGPT at this point. And one of the first things I thought of when it came out was how was it going to affect sex education? Because that's obviously what we're all about. I'm a sex educator. But I didn't really think about AI as like a whole, not just like the type in and then like the type out. I didn't think about the AI visual example of it until I started seeing like the AI creators on Instagram and like influencers, like literally models that looked so realistic, being like made up to be like proper influencers and posting Instagram reels and stories and interacting like a real human way, which started scaring me. And when they started popping up, I was like, how would this actually then affect the sex industry and the sex work industry? And recently we've been seeing a rise in non-consensual deepfake pornographic images, like the ones of Taylor Swift, which often are the person that they are being made of has no idea and has obviously not given consent to doing that, and is so easily accessible to make, and they are so realistic. So that's a really confronting issue we are seeing happening. And then Berlin has opened up the first AI brothel, and VR headsets are creating immersive 4D, as they say, porn for clients to modify and make unique to their desires. So they can literally like chat GPT the porn they want to see and make come to life, which is wild. I guess some of it is cool, but some of it more scary. I don't know. And then whilst OnlyFans currently doesn't allow for non-human accounts, once someone is verified, you can then use, and it's not as it's not as policed as we would like, but then those creators can use AI to create better or more enticing content. So it is really hard to get around. So I think we can all agree that sex work is work and can't ever be replaced in like the humanness of it, because that is obviously very important. But I am very interested in hearing everyone else's thoughts, first thoughts, pros, cons, just like any feelings that are popping up about them. Maybe if you want to start on any pros that you could think of when it comes to AI and the future of sex work.
Coming in really quickly on like my kind of like sex educator MPH brain, I kind of saw pop out of like, well, maybe STIs will be less transmitted with people using AI robots. But then I thought, will they? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. People are still going to be having sex with other people, I presume. I don't think that this is going to be something where people are only having sex with robots and therefore, STIs are just going to disappear. So I don't know.
And only if it's like a personally owned robot, right? Which is like, one of the articles you shared, Em, was talking about how expensive like a dumb sex robot is. So I think like the brothel example in Berlin, that could be actually a vector for spreading STIs.
Right. Like who's cleaning these things? What's going on? What's happening? Where are these fluids going?
Yeah. And even I guess like not if we even forget about like the robot side of it, because that's obviously like really technologically advanced and I think already puts a lot of people off. But just like in terms of like AI porn stars, and what we're watching not being real at all. It's like, whose bodies are they going off of? Mm-hmm. And like, whose gaze is that? So that's also a really interesting take.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the deep fake porn, because that was kind of one of my first thoughts of this topic was like, who are the robots designed to look like? Or like, if it's just VR and not like a full body robot, like, what images are being used to feed into like the visualization that you see, if it's designed in a way that you can be like, I want it to look like this person, and they're just like a random private person, or they're somebody in sex work who hasn't like consented this particular use of their image. That seems really concerning and like kind of on the spread of the deep fake. And I feel like one of the things people are talking about with that is like people, especially young people, starting to kind of like lose the ability to distinguish what is fake and what is real. That could be a concern here as well. I think also we can get into like, what kinds of scenes are you having it act out? And like, is that realistic or healthy?
In terms of, I was trying to think of pros because like my mind is immediately going to what seems dangerous and unethical about this. But I was thinking that it's possible that AI sex work might be more accessible to people with disabilities. Yeah. Like, or anyone who might, maybe require some more privacy or anonymity around like exploring their sexuality. It might, allow people to explore a fantasy that they might feel some social stigma or shame around, or, if you're disabled and you have trouble interacting with someone up close, like that level of like, or the disconnect that it's not actually a human might be helpful to some people as they're trying to experiment with their sexuality while maybe not wanting to be vulnerable with another human being. Of course, my mind goes to the dangers of that, like why maybe it's important to keep the humanity in sex, but yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I really like that point of accessibility, like in terms of like if we're just thinking about sex work in general, obviously sex work is work and sex workers are people literally making a living off of this, so they're not going to charge like pennies for a really cool job that needs to be professional and needs to have some backing behind it, years of education and practice and getting experience and reputation and all of that stuff. So sometimes it's not the most affordable thing, and there's obviously a conversation of like, but should it be affordable? Should it be this thing that can be accessible to everyone? But especially that thing about, can you even get to the buildings of these places? Or if you are disabled, is there an opportunity for you to put on a VR headset and have a different experience because of some limitations, like physical limitations or mental, emotional, that you have in your real life, maybe then you can play with that in some way. But I guess, again, you can always flip it to be like, but could that become dangerous when it's kind of like the Matrix. Like, are you just going to live inside that? Are you going to choose to live inside that instead of like real human sex that isn't perfect and can't be like exactly molded to the algorithm of a person and experience you want? So yeah, the pros are, there's not many, but it's happening. And I guess we've just got to like look at the pros to see why it keeps happening, I guess, to try and figure it out. Yeah.
On that last point, I thought that was a really good point of like what is the line of creating a space for people to explore things versus like the way that, yeah, just only existing in a virtual world, or exploring things that like a normal, like not a normal human, but like exploring things that a human would not say yes to, and like that becoming normalized. I thought it was really interesting in the article about the person who started the first AI brothel in Berlin. He describes it as a safe space, whereas I feel like sex workers are like professionally create safe spaces for people to explore. Like that is part of what they do. They're very like informed in creating safe spaces. They're very informed in like harm reduction practices for themselves. And it reminded me of that quote of men are afraid that women will laugh at them and women are afraid that men will kill them. Like on a bad date or something, where it's like he's like feels this need to create a safe space because like maybe a sex worker would find what you're asking them weird, versus like so much work goes into making sex work safe so they're not in physical danger, that it already is a very safe space. And like the kind of disconnect between the way he was describing a need in this industry versus like how we know that it functions was kind of like jarring to me.
Yeah, and what's the likelihood of a real sex worker actually judging someone for requesting what they want? Like, they've seen it all. They're professionals. Like, it feels like there wasn't actually a need there.
Yeah, and I'm always just curious, like where people come from. I tried to figure out like the background of this person. He looks like he's been like a sex tech consultant, so he's sort of in the space. But I'm always skeptical when somebody disrupts an industry without people from that industry. Like nothing about us without us. So I'm curious, like how many sex workers he really spoke to about like what is needed to innovate in this area, if anything.
That's interesting. Like who's making it, right? So like the conversation might change if it was like a group of sex workers that were on the board of an AI like sex worker brothel. But usually that's not the case. And I think it's like it is interesting though, right? Because like whether or not we like it, it's kind of here, right? And so like it's only going to get better with like better technology. And the fact that, you know, like porn is so popular and Pornhub is so popular, like I think the main thing that I'm thinking about right now is the reason I think why Pornhub is so popular and why sites are so popular that you can access at home in the privacy of your own home is because you're not sharing your proclivities really with anyone unless, you know, with your browser history, if you're not doing it incognito. Whereas if you have to physically go to a brothel, that's a whole different kind of form of disclosure, right? Like you kind of have to be someone to say like, yes, it's me. I'm in this AI brothel and that's okay. And like, I wonder as a business model, like how they're going to keep kind of privacy of their clients. I don't know if anyone saw the Ashley Madison documentary on Netflix, but the cheating website that had like huge data breach scandal where everyone learned who cheaters were with their names and emails. Like it kind of just rings true. And like your data are just not safe. And so like, how are people comfortable, if at all, with going to a public space like this? That to me is kind of like an interesting question about this, because this technology will get better and it will continue, but who actually is going to attend something like this without kind of fear of judgment or fear that their personal information is going to get leaked?
And what data are they saving? Like I think you're just described like walking in before you go into the room, but like, is that computer keeping any data? I would presume yes, because AI is all about generative learning, right? So like it's going to
Yeah.
assess the experience it has with anybody who comes in and like learn from that, which could be a data sense like privacy issue. And it could also, if somebody goes in there and asks for something like really violent or really like not cool, that could be what the AI learns as like normal and standard. I feel like we talked about this in the last episode, right? Like that one AI, this is not in the field of sex, but they like built a chat GPT and just sent it to the internet, and like in 24 hours it was a Nazi. Yeah. Like it's in 24 hours, are these things going to be like really like accepting of violence or like poor treatment or anything like that?
Yeah. Or what I just thought as you were saying that was like, or could it be used as like a tool? But obviously there's like encryption and obviously like data protection. But if someone's asking for something like super violent, is it not like a ring a bell moment to be like, we need to watch this person? But obviously we couldn't do, I don't think that would allow it to happen. But also whilst Kathy was speaking, I was like, whilst we're, you're walking in, and that's obviously one of the things DB was saying, but it's then also if we are asking AI to create our deepest, darkest, wildest fantasies, it's almost like a introspective thing for that person to be like, what do I really like and what turns me on, or what do I want to explore? And that could be a positive of like an opportunity for you to actually like pin down what you like and have like as a creative opportunity, as a creative activity to be like, what do I like and what do I not like? And then I was just thinking that would also be really wild data to breach, to find out what like the CEOs of big tech companies are like going and typing in their wildest and most secretive fantasies ever to role play with technology.
It's a lot of blackmail opportunity.
Yeah.
Like,
it is.
like,
yeah.
I mean, people are unafraid of kind of like, I'm just going to do whatever I want, right? So like, what is going to stop, people from doing that, especially if they're told what people at Ashley Madison were told, which is your data is safe with us. Like we have this 5-star thing, and it's literally them just photoshopping 5 stars on their website. They like, it doesn't mean anything for some companies, Yeah. But no, I'm with you. I think that ultimately, I've been thinking a lot about the movie Her, right? I assume by now everyone has seen that movie.
It's such a good movie.
Like 15 years old or something like that, 10, 15 years old. And, there's that scene where like a person is hired to be kind of the conduit to them having a sexy experience. Like the voice is kind of inside of the model or the sex worker's head, kind of like saying words, and then the sex worker is kind of acting them out. And that to me feels like a more interesting, realistic question about like, how will we combine AI and people when it comes to sex work? Because I could totally see a world where people have, whatever you want to call it, AI girlfriends or someone's voice that they're kind of chatting with. And then an actual sex worker is hired to kind of live out the fantasies that that person has been experiencing with that AI chatbot or voice bot or whatever it is. So I'm kind of curious, is that like, is that movie kind of resonant with you all? Like, how did that movie get it right 15 years ago? And like, we're not even there yet. It's just, I feel like it's such a fantastic representation of like all the things that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I feel like that scene shows, I haven't seen the movie in many years, but I think it shows a realistic example of what integrating AI into existing sex work services might look like, because it's going to get to a point where sex workers like can't really compete and either have to incorporate the AI or just lose their clientele to it entirely. But yeah, and as I recall in the movie, wasn't it like not a super satisfying sexual experience? Like I feel like Joaquin Phoenix was weirded out by the conduit.
Like it.
Yeah.
Didn't the like computer get jealous too eventually of like the real life girl? I can't remember. I feel like there was a lot of jealousy at the end of that, where she like
the real life girl actually started crying. I remember the scene at the end, because she's like, what you two have is so beautiful, and like I'm not really a part of, it's so beautiful that I get to be a part of it. And he's like, all right, you're kind of, it's a little much. Like it was just like kind of ruined the moment. But yeah, it just shows though, like even that part is like, there's a human being behind this. Like, it doesn't just get to be like this robotic thing. And I think that's what the articles all had in common that you sent around, M, which is like human connection cannot be replaced. And that is something that is like kind of at the core of this in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm skeptical that this like future where nobody wants a normal sex worker, like a human sex worker, is the future. They don't call it the world's oldest profession for nothing. Like, the human connection is so much a part of what people have gone to sex workers for thousands of years. And I just don't see how. I mean, I think maybe technology can advance. I'm curious if folks have other experiences with AI. I feel like it doesn't work very well yet. Like, I don't think it's like at the level of human interactions yet. And then I think like people do seek out these kinds of interactions specifically for the human connection. I think even like exploring things that you're nervous or kind of like embarrassed about. Like, a computer is not going to like reassure you in the same way that a human being is. And so I feel like that connection is something that like can never be replaced by technology.
Yeah, I agree. I think like whilst doing the research for this episode, I was like, I don't see it ever completely taking over. I do agree that like it is here, and you know, Berlin's already got, and maybe it's just the novelty of having these VR headsets. But I remember when Apple or Meta, whoever did it first, put that VR headset on their advertising and stuff, I think everyone was just like, porn immediately. They were like, wow, porn is it's gonna completely blow up now, how you can just lie in your bed and like be watching it, and how like we do have to figure out how we are going to at some point integrate. I just think I'm more worried at this point for like porn stars and porn performers.
Yeah.
Because I think that is like, I even see it so often on like these weird Facebook adverts. Have you ever seen that like game where it's like you choose the next step? I don't know what it works. Like you choose the move, the character. Yeah, like that. And it's like not super realistic, but like it's very close. And I feel like at the rate technology advances, I feel like in a year's time, it would be very hard to distinguish even video content. And I think even then it's like, a lot of the time, I know lots of people do watch ethical porn for the realisticness of it and like to see human bodies, like real human bodies, cellulite, hair, all of that stuff. But there is still a large portion of people in that audience that want hyper femme and like really small Eurocentric bodies. And that's the concerning part. And I feel like that's very easy for like one guy in tech to bleep, 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 put it together and like make so much money off of not real people. And yeah, that's where I'm like currently worried about. Yeah.
But like you said, like AI has to take from somewhere, right? And that's why like artists are so pissed, rightfully so, is because their work is being taken and used in order to create new work without their consent. And so I wonder what the legal kind of, just essentially like legally what it will look like, Kathy, our resident lawyer, like, how many lawsuits will happen if porn ends up, being AI porn, I should say, like videos are an amalgamation where you could tell like, oh, that's this porn star's eyes. Like this is her hair. This is her body. This is his penis. Like, what are we going to do legally? Like, are there just going to be millions and millions of lawsuits? Is that unrealistic? Like what exactly happens right now in the world of AI with like lawsuits?
I'm not sure exactly. I mean, one thing with a lawsuit is they're expensive. So like the average sex worker might not be financially feasible for them to sue over like their eyes being used by deepfake porn or AI porn or anything like that. Because like it's going to cost several tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to maybe get that much money back. But I think you could maybe make like an intellectual property argument, like if they're pulling from published content that somebody else has published and you have like the backing of, whatever production company, and they might have more money and more resources to actually bring the suit, that could maybe be more successful. But I think that's the problem with, relying on people who are harmed to bring these suits is it's like not an accessible system, the legal system. And it's also very hostile to sex workers. Like our federal laws have only gotten worse for protection of sex workers and their ability to exist on the internet. And, like, are you going to find a judge or jury that is sympathetic to you as a sex worker? I wouldn't bank on that being the most successful path.
We talk a lot about sex education, but when I'm shopping for products to support my sexual wellness, exploration, and expression, I head to the experts at Lion's Den. Lion's Den is an adult retailer with over 50 locations nationwide and hundreds of your favorite brands. They have everything you need to explore and express your sexual side. Right now, you can use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off your purchase in-store and online at lionsden.com. Follow them on social media at Lions Den Adult on Instagram and TikTok for exclusive offers, deals, and giveaways.
You know sex is supposed to be fun, right?
We landed in Reykjavik and we're like, competition is on. We're all getting laid.
I'm Billy Procida, host of the Man Whore Podcast. I've been doing this show for over 9 years, and I still get surprised by the stories my guests have to share.
And my date was my dad's girlfriend.
Whoa, we gotta really back up. Want to know what all of that was about? Follow the Man Whore Podcast wherever you listen to audio. And stay slutty.
Yeah, it's scary because I think on Instagram you have to say if there's AI generated content in what you're posting. Like you have to
Check it.
put that
toggle
somewhere.
it.
Yeah, you have to like say this is generated by AI, but I feel like even just, I mean, this has been happening for years now, but obviously like just small edits on like Facetune and stuff like that it's so hard to pick up and so hard for us to be like literate in that way. And now it's like taking from someone, you can take a photo of your face and like be sad and crying and you just like press one button and it's a fake smile and it's makeup and it's your hair is done, and it's really concerning. And I feel like the internet, maybe not the internet, but social media platforms, and maybe they're doing this somewhat on purpose and they could definitely put more money behind it, but they aren't doing enough to pick it up quick enough. But then it's like, are they not profiting off of these AI creators that have millions of followers? And I think there was even like an AI creator pageant the other day, or AI influencer pageant. And like this one person won. And obviously she had like pink hair. She's white. She's got big boobs. She's got a tiny waist. And it's like almost like, yeah, it's really dystopian, but that's where we are. And it's really interesting. I just hope that, like you were saying, Kathy, like it's really hard to get a backing, and especially like in the US. And I mean, in most places in the world, like sex work doesn't have like a legal backing, and they don't have the support of like the governments and protection of the government. So now with this, it's like, how are they going to protect their intellectual property of like their films and their bodies and their characters? It's really interesting. It's going to be an interesting place to take sex education to as well, with like media literacy and teaching people. Like, I don't even know how to tell the difference a lot of the time because it's that good and it'll only get better. So yeah.
And I think those like labels on social, we need more nuance too. This is like a total aside, but my wedding photographer was complaining about those filters because if you use like Adobe Acrobat AI to get rid of a clock in the background, all of the photos will be labeled as generated by AI. And that's like a real photo of a real person. They've just edited it using an AI tool. That's obviously very different than like, this is not what this person's face actually looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Switching gears for a hot second, because I think this is relevant. Let's talk about anime porn for a second, right? Because I think that could, similar to kind of like how audio erotica like has real people and like we've hired actors, but it is becoming a little bit more mainstream. Anime porn in Japan in particular and other places around the world is very, very popular, right? And like we are paying, theoretically, in ethical porn, artists to create this porn. We're paying voiceover actors and actresses to record voices for it. And that porn isn't quote unquote real. Like it is cartoons and it's not real people. And like, I'm blanking. What's the anime porn called where it's like octopi? Hentai. Thank you. At one point was like the number one category on Pornhub. And so
I think it's been top 3 for years.
Right? Like people are into it.
Yeah.
And hentai also includes like octopi limbs and kind of like things that like could be disturbing to some, could be like interesting to explore for others. So I do think it's like semi-related, not because it's AI, because people are actually using it, but I think you could make the same arguments of like, oh, we might be worried about the way in which people are engaging with this type of fantasy. Like it's not really real. Are we teaching boundaries and consent if like these kinds of things are happening? These aren't real human beings. Like, don't we want people, whatever, like all these things, but it's already here through the form of hentai and through the form of like animated content. And so I guess I wonder, like, how do we feel like hentai and animated porn fits into this conversation? And are we kind of equally worried about some of the things we're worried about for AI porn that we are for hentai?
Yeah. I think my first thing was like what hentai and anime do, although sometimes it can be like more realistic compared to like the dystopian or that like wild fantasy, is, in between, it'll be like they'll just jump to the other side of the room. And that's like not something a human can do. And it'll remind you that they aren't real.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where like the problem comes in. It's like you can create these, one of the pros of AI porn is that you can create fantasies that actors can't act out. They can't act out having 3 penises or being in space or, all of these other wild fantasies that of course we're going to have as humans. But I think it's when we create these fantasies to look too realistic, and I think that's where this AI porn is going, is that they have that power to do that. Whereas like hentai and anime, it's like their lane is to make sure it can't be on the other side, and we can't mistaken it for real actors in real life. But I do get where you're coming from. But that was my first thought. It's just like sometimes it might feel really realistic, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh yeah, but I can't fly, or I can't speed across the room, or I can't, something like that.
The key difference for me in hentai and AI porn is the production process, because I don't know, for me, hentai I'm not as worried about because it requires human creators, artists, writers, animators to actually design and produce this piece of content, whereas AI, it's like we don't even know the tools and processes going into creating that thing. So I just think naturally, because the production process is so different, I don't have as many ethical concerns personally, especially around consent and privacy and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think this idea, like you were saying, Em, of like situations that literally cannot exist is a distinction. And I also feel like that's where like a VR, or we've just been talking about VR, but like augmented reality too, I feel like could be like an interesting path of this, of like you are still seeing like what's in the room with you, but like, AI has changed their head into an octopus or something like that. That feels less concerning because it's like you're saying, it's not purporting to be real, and it couldn't be real. Versus something that's closer to like a deep fake or just like a real human's image doing something that they wouldn't do otherwise.
That all makes a lot of sense. I obviously agree with all of you, but I do think it's interesting to think about. One other kind of thing, just generally, that concerns me already about porn use is that, like, talking about, I did this trivia, like sex ed trivia. And so when I looked at like the Pornhub categories that were at the top, they're kind of like seared into my memory. And the teen category is consistently at the top for both men and women in terms of Pornhub's reporting. And so like, I'm already concerned. I've been concerned about people's porn usage and like the way in which that we, especially with the category teen, are using literal children for fantasy. And it's just like I don't know. I think there's a lot to be looked at there already. Like before we even get to this conversation, there's like a prequel of like, we've already been talking about ethical porn. Like, but even, I just don't know what to do about that. I think that like it's a problem. And I think like people don't have the education to understand, boundaries and consent and kind of like the question is why? Like, why is teen consistently a top 3 category for both genders, for all genders, presumably? And like, what's happening there? And how do we even talk about that before we get to this like AI portion of this conversation?
Also, just a thought on that data too is like that's among their users, right? So you have a smaller than the population. Like, I don't think that's necessarily true for men and women in the population writ large. When you look at like other studies of what people find attractive, have you guys seen this chart? It's really depressing. Men pretty much consistently find like 20-year-olds attractive, 20-year-old women attractive their whole life. So like the age that they find most attractive does not change as they age. Versus with
classic Leo.
Yes, exactly. Versus with women, like in the general population, it does increase. So like a 40-year-old woman finds a 40-year-old man the most attractive, and a 40-year-old man finds a 20-year-old girl the most attractive. So just wanted to, like, I do think there is a gender difference here, but likely much fewer women are using Pornhub. And so that data will be swayed a little bit.
Skewed. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I just think it's funny now, like coming to the end of this episode. It's like, how did I even think we would discuss this topic of like, obviously we're going to be concerned about AI porn because we're still concerned about normal, real life porn and real life porn usage. So of course, like until we've got those issues sorted out, how can we learn from that and then go forward into like a more ethical, futuristic porn environment? So yeah, of course we're going to have the same concerns and then plus a whole bunch of new ones and new nuanced ones. Yeah,
it kind of feels like we're always running to catch up as a culture with the porn conversation. Like we're always behind the 8 ball. Like it'd be one thing if we were kind of on top of things and felt like, okay, like we're teaching our kids, we have porn literacy, we know what this content is and how to use it healthfully, but actually we're just more screwed up than ever, and teen is the top category, and children are watching porn at like age 6.
Somebody help.
We weren't in a good place, and now we're just throwing gasoline onto the situation with AI. So yeah, I hope it's something that like conversations like this, which are had before a huge AI porn boom, I hope stuff like conversations like this help mitigate whatever fallout is coming, because I think we kind of didn't have the conversation about internet porn early enough. So I hope just having these conversations helps.
Yeah.
Wow. And this move to like, or I guess not move, but we have talked about, like ethical porn. And the basis of that is like buy-in and consent and profit going to the people who are in that film or in that image, which just can't exist with AI unless you're like paying somebody for their image. But then like the content of the interaction, like unless they're sitting there being like, yes, no, you can't really apply like the 7 principles or whatever of ethical porn to this technology because it's not the way it functions.
Yeah.
We would literally need to write new ethical principles because it's a totally different realm.
I mean, it's coming whether we're ready or not. And I'm really grateful. Em, thank you for leading this episode. I'm sure there will be lots and lots of updates in the coming months and years, and we will be here to comment on them and give our 2 cents. If you want to hear more sex ed content and engage with us, make sure to check us out on Instagram and on TikTok. And we have a whole bunch of other episodes, definitely a couple on porn if you're interested in learning more. And thanks everyone for listening. Our creator, host, and executive producer is me, Danielle Bezalel. Our communications lead is Catherine Cohen. Our producer is Sadie Leegee. Our marketing coordinator is Mitch Coburn. Our social media coordinator is M. Kirsty Frazier. Our music theme is by Hook Sounds. Thanks so much to our featured guests, partners, and listeners. Want to partner with us? Email us at sexedwithDB@gmail.com. Do you have a silly sex story to share, need some advice, or have thoughts on the episode you just heard? Give us a booty call for a chance to be featured on the podcast. Check the show notes for the details. For more sex ed content, follow us on IG at sexedwithdb podcast and on TikTok at sexedwithdb. Want to know your sex toy zodiac sign? Go to our link tree on our IG now. See you next time.